Well, good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of the Trulas College of Business, our partners at MU Extension and Engagement, I wanted to welcome all of you to the fifth offering of the Trulas Business Insider Series. My name is Ajay Vinze, and it is certainly my pleasure and privilege to serve as Dean of the Trulas College of Business. Today's session is going to be moderated by Professor Daryl Smith, and there's just an outstanding panel of experts who will be joining Daryl this afternoon to take and address this most timely of issue. I guess we all can agree that it would be an understatement for us to say that 2020 has been a stormy year and we have been weathering stormy environments. So the title of today's webinar is Stormy Weather Managing Organization Culture. It's spot on for our time. So without further ado, looking forward to an excellent conversation, I would like to turn it over to Professor Daryl Smith.
Thank you, Dean Vinze, and to all of our attendees, welcome to today's session of the Trulas Business Insider. It is my honor and privilege to host today's session. As the Dean has mentioned, our topic today, a very timely topic, stormy weather, managing organizational climate. And I'm really pleased to have four insiders with me today. Our panel of insiders are Peter Callan, MU Healthcare, Lenore Maglione, Emerson Electric, Melanie Moore, Bayer Corporation, and Arti Sharma, MasterCard. I want to thank our panelists in advance for their insights and their expertise. The expertise that they are going to share, I'm confident we will all benefit from that. And I also want to thank all of our attendees who have signed in from various locations around the country. In a few moments, I will ask our panelists to introduce themselves and to say a few words about their companies. Following those introductions, I have some prepared questions for our panelists specific to culture and climate. I think we need to address both of those topics. I will admit that I sometimes get the two confused. Leading into each question, I will provide some background and context to help better frame each question. And then finally, there should be plenty of time for questions and answers from our attendees. We will be using Zoom's Q&A function for receiving those questions. And I would think at this point, many of us are Zoom experts, so you likely know where that Q&A function is. Again, I'm confident this is going to be a really lively discussion, so let's get started. At this point, I would like for our panelists to introduce themselves, say a little bit about who you are, and provide us a little bit of background on your respective organizations. And Peter, may we start with you?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peter Callan, and I am Senior Director of Talent at MU Healthcare here in Columbia, Missouri. MU Healthcare is comprised of 5 hospitals, about 60 outpatient settings, schools of medicine, nursing, health professions, and all told about 10,000 employees. And our mission is to save and improve lives through education, research, and clinical expertise. So delighted to be here.
Thank you. And Lenore?
Well, greetings, everybody, from Emerson Electric at our corporate headquarters here in St. Louis, Missouri. Certainly want to thank you, Daryl, and thank you, Dean Vinze, for allowing me to be part of this great group of panelists here and to share some of what Emerson's been up to. I'm Lenore Maglione, and my role here at Emerson is the Corporate Manager of Learning. And in that role, I have the privilege of shaping and supporting the development of our emerging and current leaders. Emerson Electric is a well-respected global industrial giant. We are ranked 120 on the list of Fortune 500 organizations. We serve the industrial, commercial, and residential markets. We have 200 plus manufacturing sites globally, and we're in 140 countries. We have 90,000 employees, and we were founded in 1890. So we have a long history of establishing a culture within that. Here's a tidbit that a lot of you don't realize. We have hundreds of items that you come in contact with daily that Emerson has had its hands in. We're considered an essential business for the world, the markets, and also the communities in which we serve.
Hi, my name is Melanie Moore, and I am the Senior Director of Strategy for the HR Innovations Organization at Bayer. I have been with the company for 12 years. It was previously Monsanto Company that was acquired by Bayer a couple of years ago that I'm sure most of you have heard about. So I'm excited to be here today. A little bit about Bayer. It's a 157-year-old company with over 100,000 employees in 80 countries. We have 3 divisions: consumer health, which most of you know, Bayer Aspirin, Flintstone Vitamins, Aleve, those products. We also have our pharmaceuticals division, which has some oncology products as well as some birth control. And then also our crop science division, which is mainly made up of what was acquired through Monsanto. So I'm excited to be here today and share some insights on organizational culture and climate. Thank you.
And Artie, please.
Hi, my name is Aarti Sharma, and I am Vice President at MasterCard in their technical operations business and have been at MasterCard for close to 14 to 15 years now. A little bit about MasterCard. I know whenever people hear MasterCard, they think it's a credit card company. And, you know, we usually get asked, hey, can you waive off my credit limit and things like that? So we're not a credit card company. We are actually a technology company. Yes, we are definitely in the finance space, but we are a technology company. We make and enable payments faster and in a secure manner globally around the world. We operate in all the 206 countries in over 160 currencies, and we process a day at least 600 million transactions. So little fun fact, transaction gets approved or declined in 1/100th of a millisecond, even before before even you blink your eyes. So that's why we say we are a technology company, because there's so much network behind everything that we do. So just that's a little bit about MasterCard.
Excellent. Thank you all very much for those introductions. So let's talk culture and climate. Culture has been described as the operating system that powers the company. Or you might say that it is the company's DNA. Culture includes the organization's traditions, rituals, celebrations. Ideally, culture creates and sustains excellence in the organization. Organizations lead culture. We're going to talk about climate in just a second. We manage climate, but we lead culture. It should be linked to our strategy, mission, vision, and values. And if I can quote Shiv Sharma, likely not related to our panelist, Artie Sharma. Artie is shaking her head. Chasing your ideal organizational culture is truly a fascinating experience. It's like chasing utopia. You never completely get there. All that matters is that you're moving towards it. A healthy company culture can lead to higher corporate performance, including profits. According to a recent report from the National Bureau of Economic Research, 90% of CEOs and CFOs believe that if they have the right culture in their company, it will increase the value of the organization. And I want to get these statistics correct. In that same survey, 85% of CEOs and CFOs believe that an unhealthy corporate culture leads to unethical behavior. I'm pretty sure it was only maybe 2 years ago that Wells Fargo Bank lost nearly 300 billion in market cap in a single day. And many say that was due to its toxic company culture. Now, to our attendees, I am happy to report that our panelists each represent companies with healthy corporate cultures. And so panelists, if you would now briefly describe your organization's culture and what you enjoy about that culture. And once again, Peter, if we could begin with you, please.
Thank you, Daryl. Here at MU Healthcare, I've been here 11 years. And at this stage in my career, I thought that I was maybe just going to have a job when I joined here 11 years. But it's when you work in healthcare, it just wraps you up and you get heavily involved, because our mission is to save and improve lives. So we attract and retain people who share that mission. When I joined here 11 years ago, we were starting this journey of transformation of our workforce into one that is high performing, very growth oriented, very agile, and truly focused on patient and clinical outcomes. So that's the kind of workforce transformation program or project that we took on. And when it comes to culture I find will exist whether you design it or not. And so we set out very intentionally to create a culture that was very positive, that would get us to our mission of saving improved lives. So we launched many initiatives around that, but we wrapped them all up in something what we call the culture of yes. And for us, the culture of yes is 10 behaviors that everybody in any location, any time of the day or night can exhibit. We have people working in multiple locations, 7 days a week, different shifts, hundreds of different roles. So we wanted something that everybody could say, these are the 10 behaviors that we stand for, that we display to our colleagues, to our patients, to our visitors, to our community. And examples are no public venting, say-do ratio 1-to-1. If you say you can do something, you do it. Warm welcome, anticipate needs. So all these 10 behaviors, we just reinforce them. And we use the science, neuroscience research to figure out ways, how do we hardwire these behaviors? So we took that very simple approach of doing things like repeating these behaviors before every single meeting, finding ways at means to call out what's an example of a say-do ratio 1-to-1. By using these little buttons, wearing them wherever we can, or yes buttons, finding ways to reinforce it. If I see somebody doing something, I can give them, it was originally a coupon, now it's an online kudos, points. If I see somebody, helping a patient out of a car and grabbing a wheelchair and bringing them all the way to the emergency room, get them a culture of yes certificate within 24 hours. And all these things just to reinforce it so that it becomes part of our DNA. And it's worked very well. It is now who we are, the culture of yes. Patients who have been coming to our organization for decades say, what has happened? Because you walk down our hallways now and you can just sense people, if somebody looks lost, 10 people are on them saying, can I help you find you the way? So it's really very effective. As a result, pretty much all the metrics that we measure ourselves with, patient engagement, growth, clinical outcomes, and employee engagement, all have trended exactly where we want them. So that's our culture of yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. I love that culture of yes. And you recite the culture before meetings, then it becomes a filter of sorts. It becomes what you stand on in that meeting conversation. Lenore, please tell us about the culture at Emerson.
Well, Peter, first of all, I have to tell you, I loved a couple of the key words that you said. You said that it's a transformational process, and it also takes intentionality. And that is absolutely key. And we can see that here at Emerson. We want to have our culture to be one where we're continually striving to create this climate that provides meaningful, engaging experiences for our employees. We want them to want to be here. We don't want them to feel they have to be here. We want them to be engaged, committed, because that garners energy and value for them and for the organization. So at Emerson, as we strive to drive innovation that makes the world healthier, it makes the world smarter, it makes the world more sustainable, we are continually looking at that culture that was established through our vision, our mission, back since 1890. And we're looking at that and challenging ourselves and asking questions about it. So culture is part of a human system. And as such, we constantly have to be examining that human system. We look at ourselves as being innovators, question askers, and problem solvers. And as such, we have two mantras that it's embedded into our behaviors, our systems, our processes, our procedures, everything we do at Emerson. The first one is we like to say it's never been done before. So we're going to look at different ways to attack everything that we do. And we have one that says consider it solved. And we apply that to our human relations in our organization. We apply that to the markets and the worlds that we serve in. And we also apply it to the communities that we're part of. When there are things that need to be dealt with, we are at our best as an organization. So when we've had this unpredictable year of 2020, we've seen Emerson be able to step up as an essential business in the world, and to be able to not only impact our own organization, but to keep sustaining others around us in the communities in which we serve through our behaviors that we use in the organization. We have our values defined down to behavioral levels. We have our systems and processes that support them. But it's up to us as that human system to breathe life into all of those things. And that's where we have to be very intentional as leaders, as employees, as community members, to be able to do that. So those two mantras really are our guiding force in this organization and continue to serve us very well.
Thank you, Lenore. And as you described that culture, I just got the sense that there's a culture of innovation at Emerson, and it seems that has served the company very well.
And it makes it a lot of fun to work in an organization that has that mentality. Is it perfect? Is it stressful? Sure. Is it challenging? Sure, as this year has been. But when we have that within our organization and part of our cultural aspect, then we know that we will get through this, and working together, we're going to be able to manage whatever comes in front of us.
Excellent. Thank you. And Melanie, please, let's hear about Bayer Corporation.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Bayer culture is really built upon what we call our life values. And life stands for leadership, integrity, flexibility, and efficiency. And so within each one of those, there are 3 different attributes that we look for and that we show on a daily basis as we continue to do our work. So when we think about leadership, a couple of those attributes include play to win, lead with purpose. Under integrity, we want to act sustainability, build trust, and be inclusive. Under flexibility, we think about creating value for our customers, being innovative and experimenting. And under efficiency, we want to be accountable. We want to be lean and fast. And all of those things help us as a culture be able to not only support all of our employees, but the customers that we serve. So that's really everything that we do is built around these life values.
Excellent. I love it. And you have an acronym to work with, life values.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Arti. Arti, you and I have talked before about the culture at MasterCard, so we'd love to hear from you right now.
Yeah, definitely. So as everybody was sharing their vision, for MasterCard, our vision is definitely a world beyond cash, right? We all know that with cash, there comes a lot of trafficking, lot of laundering globally, not just within the United States. So we constantly are innovating and creating products that will help us against that fight with cash. We strongly believe that it's in our DNA pretty much that anything that we're doing, we somehow have to relate it to doing well by doing good. And another thing that our CEO kind of enforces again and again in every message that goes out is a decency quotient, or we call it DQ. So just to kind of constantly motivate the employees, every year there are awards given out to people who are serving the community. And this year, personally, I have won 2 CEO Force for Good awards for my work in the St. Louis community during the pandemic, where we were doing all kinds of things personally with my help of my family and friends. So very fortunate that that recognition is constantly there for the employees. That's why their motivation. There's constantly commitments to the community, may it be a mentoring program, may it be activities to provide meals globally, or may it be a simple providing prepaid cards to the underserved communities and countries, it's specifically in Africa. One of the latest ones that we just did was we committed $500 million to close the racial wealth and opportunity gap in Black communities as part of the Juneteenth, as part of the bigger solidarity program that MasterCard does support and provide that commitment back into the community. We were actually, St. Louis is one of those cities that is part of that commitment to be able to provide financial tools to the Black communities and also help the Black-owned businesses grow and become more cashless, and even, just tap and pay, because most of them do not have the financial stability and capability to get and convert their network into cashless or tap and go. So we're kind of helping those Black-owned businesses to step up and do certain things. Lastly, just because DQ is in our DNA, we strongly believe a lot in diversity and inclusion. Every single hiring decision, everything that we do has a very big D&I associated with it. It's not just like an objective that are you doing a D&I? It's more like who we are. This is what we believe in. And we believe that every single person should be connected to a priceless opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you, RT. I love it. Decency quotient, DQ. All right, so great conversation, but let's shift the conversation now to climate. And climate is the current perception of the organization as seen by its employees. It's the company's psychological environment. Often that climate is influenced by leadership, could be influenced by organizational changes or competitive forces. And if I might quote a famous Missourian, Mark Twain, Mark Twain says, "Climate is what we expect, weather is what we get." Now, this might be true when it comes to the weather, but the axiom is quite different when it comes to organizations. In organizations, it's more accurate to say that culture is what we expect, right? I mean, that's what we are striving toward, but climate is what we get. Organizations must manage climate. Earlier, we said they must lead the culture, but they must manage climate. Let me share another statistic with you. According to the American Institute of Stress, 80% of workers feel stressed when they are on the job. US businesses alone lose up to $300 billion each year as a result of the direct and indirect cost associated with workplace stress. And that's just one facet of climate, but clearly managing climate is critical and affects the bottom line of the organization. And so to my insiders, my question is, how do you assess climate in your organizations? Is it measurable? How do you assess it? And can you offer a best practice for managing climate? And Lenore, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you on this question.
Sure. Emerson has been asking employees what it feels like to work at Emerson since 1954. That is 66 years that we have been seeking this type of information. All of our locations globally are part of this survey, and it's done usually on about a 36-month basis, on a rotational type of basis. It can be sooner if need be. We ask, we listen, we seek additional feedback, and we're held accountable through follow-up. This is a huge, huge part of our employee relations system here at Emerson, and we take this very, very seriously. In fact, a summary of every report from that location, a summary of the report sits on the desk of our CEO. And he reads it, he marks it up, he makes comments, he sends it out, and then calls on all of us to help and support that organization so they can be the best Emerson possible at that location. But this is only part of what I would say Emerson's story is. There's a saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. At Emerson, we believe that climate eats culture for lunch, dinner, and snacks in between. Because I can have at a macro level all the wonderful things in place, all the mantras, everything else in place. But what's lived at that local level for an employee through the climate they're experiencing makes or breaks it for them. And it really paints the true picture of what that climate or culture is like. So as we're looking at this, we know that research by the Hay Group shows that as much as 30% of the variation in financial performance can be directly linked to the health of the climate. And in fact, if you peel that layer back further, we know that the number one factor influencing that climate, in fact, as much up as 70% of an impact, is the leadership behavior of that person they're interacting with daily. So, you know, that leader behavior is either going to support a positive climate that engages, that motivates, that develops employees, that energizes them so they want to give that discretionary effort. And in turn, it's going to impact your bottom line. Or that person standing in that position can zap that energy and can hinder that performance, that engagement, that motivation within that. So stop and think of it this way. Think in terms of what is the best place you ever worked? What were those characteristics? And then how did it impact your performance? Then turn that around and say, okay, what's the worst place I've ever worked that I would never want to go back to? What were the characteristics of that environment? And how did it impact my performance? And in that very simple mindset, you are describing the impact of climate on culture and in an organization. So at Emerson, what we are doing is we're just not assessing an overall culture. We are now assessing the local weather, the climate, if you would. And it's our language of leadership here. And we have to ask ourselves, how are we nurturing this? So we assess our leaders and have the ability to assess our leaders' climate by looking at 6 key dimensions that research has shown has the greatest correlation to an engaging, motivating, high-performing climate. And so we are currently measuring and have the ability to measure our leaders on that. We give them that feedback. It is through a feedback, an 180 survey process, and they get that feedback from their direct reports, as well as how they're showing up as leaders. We do a leadership styles assessment that's correlated into those dimensions. Through this, we're able to give them feedback, that leader feedback, and help them build implementation plans then to actually create that climate that's going to be the best for our employees, best for Emerson, best for our suppliers, best for our customers, and better for our communities yet. So, and let me take it one step further as a final note. Pretty cool. Over the last couple of years, we've even taken this to another level. We have developed what's called a Performing and Developing at Emerson. And this is a workshop that is designed to provide individual contributors information and the skills and the knowledge and ability of how to own their performance when coming into Emerson, and not only owning their performance in the development and getting a great start, but their role in creating this great organizational climate that we so much need in order to be successful. So it's pretty cool, the steps we're making. It's a journey, and we're continually looking at this and what we can do to create that.
Excellent. Thank you, Lenore. So let's hear from Melanie, Artie, and Peter. And after we wrap up this question, I have a few other questions, but I also see that our attendees are starting to feed some questions to us. So we'll get to those questions as well.
Great, thanks, Daryl. And you know, whenever I'm asked about what makes a company have a great culture and a great climate, I always reflect on a personal story, which I will share with you all today. I was a couple years into my role at Monsanto, and I was pregnant, and my son came 15 weeks early. So clearly that was unexpected. I didn't expect to have him early. They didn't expect me to have him early. So it was truly an emergency situation. And so my mom called my boss at 4 a.m. and told her I was in labor. And literally the amount of love, I call it love, that I felt from my colleagues during that time was just unimaginable. And of course, it was highly stressful for me. My son was in the hospital for 12 weeks. Of course, at that time, you know, there wasn't a maternity plan in place where I could take some time off now and then take time off later when he comes home. So they created one. They was like, what do you need? Tell us what you need. And whatever that is, we're going to give it to you. And so I appreciated that amount of flexibility. I appreciated them bringing me gift cards to eat in the hospital cafeteria. I appreciated gas cards driving back and forth to the hospital every day. I appreciated the fact that I could, when I did go back to work, I could work from the hospital during the times where I knew the doctors made the rounds. And that's the type of thing that you can't teach someone to do, right? It's ingrained, it was ingrained in the culture of the organization that family comes first. And by having that, when I did come back to work, and by the way, my son is fine. You know, he's a healthy 9-year-old that you would never know spent that much time in doctor's offices and therapy appointments, et cetera. But being able to have that flexibility to support my family at that time made me work that much harder in the years to come. And, you know, I used to say, hey, I'm never leaving this company. They're going to have to kick me out, right? Because of that one example where they supported me when I needed them most. And I think it goes back to what Lenore was saying about leadership. And when you have great leaders that, you know, understand what their employees need and adjust their leadership styles to what that need is for each individual, that creates a great culture, and that makes it where people want to work harder, people want to stay and say positive things about the organization. So I won't go into all the surveys. I know all companies do pulse surveys, annual surveys, and 360 feedback, et cetera. But for me, that's a personal story that I share that truly impacted my decision to stay at the company, as well as to work hard and to do whatever it took to make sure that, you know, my department was successful. So that's what I'll share, Daryl.
Excellent. Thank you, Melanie. RT, what would you like to share with us?
Yeah, so actually, Melanie, I have a similar story about MasterCard. It's not pregnancy wise, but my mom was in India and she was not keeping well. This was around 2 to 3 years ago. I had gone like literally for a week. I thought I'll go in for a week and come back, you know, just see her and come back. But her health deteriorated a little bit more than expected. So my 1 week trip turned into almost 7 to 8 weeks. And the fact that I was allowed and it was okay for for me to work from there, which was not expected. I think that was, to me, that was just, you know, the connection brings you back that, no, if they are doing this for me, it builds the loyalty, right? To your point, you're not going to go, somebody has to kick you out. It just builds that loyalty back to the organization. But on the climate changes, as we're talking, climate changes are very hard on people, and everyone is always in a different cycle also when they are embracing and accepting the change. And given the current scenario of pandemic and then, working from home, MasterCard's always been very flexible about working from home. But in this current situation, where now we are about to open our offices back, we are, based on multiple surveys that happened in past 6 months to say, do you want to come back? Do you not want to come back? So love the fact that MasterCard is not enforcing the people that you have to come back by this date or things like that. Actually, our leaders have put out a new mantra out there. They are actually saying that our offices are open and ready for you whenever you are ready. So it's not like that everyone has been given a date. So this puts employees at a very comfortable spot with no pressure that they have to go to work, or what if I didn't go to work and my manager is going to think, oh, this person's not coming in. So I think that ease is there in employees to not feel pressured to go in. And then more than all of this, at MasterCard, we actually have business resource groups, and I will talk a little bit more about it in later as well. But just those resource groups, as the name says, these are business resource groups. They are made for some business value that these groups bring back to the organization. And these are all voluntary. Absolutely, you could join all 9. We have 9 groups, or just 1 or 5, depending on what your interest is. And then they all come together as a smaller family, and then they just talk about all of these changes and kind of helps employees be more connected with the changes that are going in the organization. And these groups do celebrations, we do volunteering. And again, going back to the culture, because our culture is doing well by doing good, each business resource group is associated in at least 2 to 3 volunteer activities throughout the year, so that all the employees get the opportunity to connect back to the community. So I think it's just lovely how to see that employees are always longing to say, okay, what's next in the volunteerism space, so that they can go back and volunteer. And love the passion that each employee brings into that BRG. And in turn, the BRGs bring back to the organization as part of helping people embrace the climate changes.
Excellent. Thank you, RT. And Peter, anything to add in terms of best practices And after your
Well,
response, Peter, we'll transition to
when
the questions.
hearing Melanie talk about having her baby, I mean, the Melanies of the world come to us, and nobody wants to go to a hospital unless they're having a healthy baby or expensive plastic surgery. So those are the only two reasons why people like to go to hospitals. So climate is vital for us to have our handle on, because patients will sense it. And when patients come to us, and a woman comes to our clinic with a lump in her breast, she does not want to walk into a clinic where the climate can be sensed as being negative or unhappy. And so it's very vital for us. So let me just give you a few things that we do on a very micro level to be able to assess climate on a regular basis. We do daily huddles. So we do 3 types of huddles every day. There's a departmental huddle, 5-10 minutes, a facility huddle, and system-wide huddle. And this is a way to do 2 things. We can gauge the climate, and we can fix things very, very, very quickly. Nothing is allowed to pass on to the next day unless it cannot be fixed that day. Each month, we do what we call monthly rounding. Every manager sits down for a formal conversation with every employee with a pretty curated discussion to ask, what do you want? How are you doing? How can I support you? How are you feeling? And the second way, about 4 years ago, we abandoned those terrible annual performance evaluations that are useless and everybody hates them. The managers hate them, the employees hate them. And we replaced that with what we call our grow conversations. And a grow conversation happens 4 times a year. And it really is sitting down, I'll sit with you, Darryl, and say, how are you doing? How are you feeling about work? Where do you want to work on? How do you want to develop? And it's a way to gauge how you're feeling about the organization and what I can do for you and how I can support you. We, of course, have the annual engagement surveys. We also have breakfast and lunches with leadership, and these are open conversations, and then town halls. Town halls we've moved them from the large auditoriums onto online, and that's proved to be really, really good. People are more apt to type in a question or a comment on a town hall than they are to raise their hand in an auditorium. So you can really sense, and with us obviously right now in the middle of a pandemic, it's vital that we can get a sense of how our staff are doing. Last thing I'll say is getting all this information to an organization from your employees is important, but it's useless unless you do something about it. So you have to actually respond and make it meaningful and let people know that you're responding. I'll give you an example of one thing that we've done over the last several years that responded. Many of our employees will say, well, yeah, I'm happy enough, but what's next? Like, where do I go from here? What's next for me? So we created the Career Institute, and the Career Institute is an internal institute whereby staff who typically did not have the opportunity to go to college or typically just didn't get that break, we provide entire education, hands-on training, whatever it is, to get them that certificate, that degree, the ability to move up in their career. And we now have 12 different tracks for our own staff. And talk about climate. When you, like the way that Melanie's supervisor showed her the love, this is really showing love in action. And that kind of people that we go through the Career Institute never leave us and are our best ambassadors.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. Great responses, great conversation. It is very clear that as we manage climate, it requires action. It requires action on the part of the organization and each individual manager. Hey, let's pivot to a question from one of our attendees. This question is from Ann Nacarelli. Hopefully I pronounced the last name correctly. And I will do my best to paraphrase the question. So Ann's point is, today we are in a buyer's market with respect to labor. Does that impact climate? It seems that employees would be more empowered. Motivation would increase if we had a seller's market. In a buyer's market, does that impact climate? And so I will leave that to any one of our insiders who might be willing to tackle that question.
I'll respond partially. In healthcare, there is a shortage of healthcare professionals across the country. And so sometimes we are desperate to get more pharmacists, nurses, any type of professional. And it's up to the leadership of the organization to kind of take a stand and say, do you hold out to make sure you get the best person? And I think anybody who's been in leadership knows that you can sometimes hire just because it's convenient or you're tired, but it always comes back to bite you. And I would say that with regard to the supply and demand of labor right now, I think this more than ever, an organization have to stick to their principle of going to hire for the best and people who will contribute to the climate and the culture and whatever the business outcome is. But it takes a lot of courage to do that.
And I'll add to that. I think it also links back to your employer brand. I know back at Monsanto when I first started, we didn't have an employment branding strategy, but a couple years in, we developed that, and we included employees. We wanted current employees to tell their reasons why they work at Monsanto. And we found that once we made that shift to actually include employees in that strategy, that made the world of difference when we were trying to attract talent into the organization. Because it's one thing if a recruiter's like, oh yeah, we're a great place to work, and you're looking at them like, prove it. Like, how do I know that you're just not telling me that to fill that seat? And if you have real life employees telling your story, that's what's going to attract the right people into your organization, because they're hearing and seeing and believing what your employees are saying. And so I think that's what makes the flip to, I see in the question, the buyer's market versus the seller's market. You want to be able to attract the right people, and you can do that through your employment branding strategy.
Yeah,
I would
if
agree.
I can add, go ahead, Artie.
No. Oh, go ahead, please, Lenore, and I'll follow you.
Well, in thinking of what you two have responded to, I think it's critical that we take the time, and Peter, yes, we don't hurry this process, we stick to it, but that we take the time to really assess and listen to the people that we're trying to recruit, we're trying to bring in, to see if this organization matches their values, matches what's important to them, matches how they envision and see themselves. Do they know how they would fit? Do they feel they would fit in the organization? So it's calling for people to be more transparent and for us to have safer conversations, not only with each other in the organization, because we do a lot of internal promotions within here, as many of you do too. But when bringing people in, we have to be transparent, and we're asking them to be more transparent. So we're doing a lot more sharing of who we are, our expectations, the markets we serve, the communities we serve, and all of those things, because we don't just want a warm body.
Yeah.
We want someone that's going to be part of our family and help move this organization further. And we've got to, at that touch point of having those first conversations, we've got to be transparent, and we've got to reach out and try to listen more and to connect more and to share more. And that's really critical to where we are in the market. Buyer, seller, it really is important to both of those.
I agree. I think I would like to add to what Melanie was saying, that it's important to show the data back at the time of, we all want to hire the best talent, right? So we're all in this, we're competing against each other to get the best in the technology. For technology companies, it becomes even more harder because now you are almost against the technology companies in California, right? So it's just very, very tough market to justify people to come here. When I moved from India, we didn't even know what St. Louis was. Nobody in India 20 years ago, there was no St. Louis on the map. So for our parents, it was a very tough decision. Okay, we don't know, we just know New York or Las Vegas. We don't know where St. Louis. So same thing, a lot of kids who are graduating from college and convincing them to come into St. Louis to do their internship or coming and doing their jobs here, it is all about brand and what data we are showing back to them to convince them, saying that 90% of our employees are saying they would recommend this company to somebody else, or 85% are saying that they would continuously work with MasterCard. So I think that data is very important to show when you're going out on these recruitment events.
One other thing that I'll add in really quickly, Daryl, sorry about that, but is that in our culture, it's also hard for external people coming into leadership roles into the company, because our culture is so different and so open. A lot of people have a hard time in the first year because they're like, what is this place? What do you mean I can just do it. You know, we're used to having to go through, you know, a big long process to move a project forward, not just having a quick conversation and saying, okay, run with it. And so that's also something to consider when you're thinking about your brand and your culture, is making sure that people understand how it works once you get inside. Because I know for me, for example, this is another quick example. When I started, I needed to travel. And I came from an environment where Jesus himself had to sign off on travel. And so when I started at Monsanto, I was like, okay, so what do I need to do to travel? And my boss said, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, who needs to approve my travel? And she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, do I need to fill out a form? Do I need to get signatures? And she's like, well, you're going for work, right? And I'm like, yes. She's like, what do you need me to say, approved? And I was like, yes. She's like, approved, go. And it was just so different for me because I came from an environment where it just wasn't that easy to travel. So you have to think about that side of it too when you're creating your culture and your climate.
I love the conversation. I love that we are hearing words like engagement, inclusion, even the word love has come up a few times. So a great conversation. But let's pull in a question from Brendan. Brendan's question is about a frontline manager or maybe a mid-level manager who is saying all the right things with respect to culture, right? What we aspire to. But his day-to-day behaviors in leading the team can be really toxic to the current climate. How should organizations respond when you have a manager whose behaviors are part of that toxicity? I know how I would answer that question, but let's hear from at least two of our panelists.
So I can talk from MasterCard perspective. I mean, I know this is a smaller company for 25 people, but I'm sure there is a HR there that, you have to go to HR. If the person is making the team toxic, they have to go in as a team and kind of put it out there. At least at MasterCard, we even have a 1-800 number for anonymous calls where you can actually call in and talk about something that you really, without naming yourself, you could just do like an anonymous call on somebody. Like I said, it's a smaller company. I don't know whether all of that is set up there or not, but definitely to be together as a team and take this forward to their first HR, their business partner, whoever that is. I think they should make that person aware.
I'll just add, I have a hunch that because it's a smaller company, fear of, gosh,
Knowing.
might leave if I say something. And I would encourage whoever this, Brendan, to, it's called Crucial Conversations. And we determine, have you had the conversation, not to tell the person, but to extrapolate from them how they see themselves. And if they can't do it, give them the feedback and say, here's how your behavior is happening. And really, we have a very crucial conversation. There's a book called Crucial Conversations that may help you along with this. But the first thing I think is being very, very, very honest. And there is a risk that this person will leave. But usually, if it's a toxic environment, everything will improve if they leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Peter, and piggyback, I was sitting here thinking about one of the statements that Joseph Grenny made, who's one of the authors of Crucial Conversations, and he's a big time friend of Emerson here. And he makes this statement that you can measure the health of any organization, no matter what its size is, or family, or group of people, by one indicator. And it's by the lag time between when we recognize there's a problem or an issue and how long it takes to talk it out. Because what happens is if we don't talk it out, we're going to act it out. And so as we're looking at this means we have to manage that climate and make it safe for people to speak up. And that's going to mean there has to be courage, but there's an absolute process that Crucial Conversation teaches that works beautifully 99.5% of the time when we use that. And in fact, we have that here at Emerson, and that is one of our highest requested workshops that we have, even more so as we've been dealing with the issues that we've faced in 2020. We've had more and more requests for people to help them learn how to have these difficult conversations and have them in a candid and caring way. So just remember that, Brendan, as you're looking and thinking of this, the longer that lag is, it's not doing you any good. It's not doing that manager any good. It's not doing the organization any good. And it's going to show up in how we behave, act, and treat each other. And that's what's creating that toxic climate part of it.
Excellent. Thanks for assisting, Brendan, with what was a really, really good question. Let me go to another question from one of our attendees. The question is from Olivia Hunt, one of my former students who is now doing great work at RGA in St. Louis. And Olivia's question is around measurement and culture. We've already said that culture is something that we lead, we aspire to it. We are climbing a mountain, but how do we know if we are at the 5,000-foot level of that 10,000-foot journey or somewhere else on the journey? How do we measure our progress toward the aspirational culture of the company? And if any of our panelists would like to take that one on.
Yeah, so I think reading her question too, I think she's also talking about, what type of surveys and all of that, taking that further up. So I'm at MasterCard, the lead for Women's Leadership Network, and we are constantly talking about how do we ensure that which survey is best. So we've kind of had this similar exercise almost a year ago. And then we came to the conclusion that one survey will not do justice because the results may be biased. So you want to ask similar questions in multiple surveys to make sure your results are kind of coming out same versus just saying we have once a year a performance survey and then we're done, we'll see you next year, and just hold that accountable versus having multiple surveys during the year, either whether it's 360, either it's employment engagement survey, we even have direct manager survey. So there's so many other surveys. Somehow the results should match. If they're not, then that's a problem. Then there is something that is going on that either the employees, I think that's what Lenore was talking about, that maybe they're not, the courage is not there to speak up or to write in a survey that something is going on. So that's again a part of the culture as well, to make sure the employees are comfortable when they are answering these surveys, that this is anonymous, that this is not, my name is not written, that Aarti is saying, because we do have open comments. And honestly, we pay more attention to the comments more than just the numbers, because numbers can be, margin of error is always there, but the comments are what's coming from your heart saying, are you ready to come back to work? Yes or no, and why not? So that's what means more versus just saying that we are 80% or 90% thing. So we do value each survey's comments, and there are a committee that is put together just to read all the comments of people and then kind of explore that and give the feedback back to people using our forums of all employee meetings, staff meetings, CEO forums. So they give the answers back saying, these were some of the top comments and this is the answer that we're providing back.
And I'll add to that too. And I think this will go to helping answer the next question from Dale Wright, who is one of my Mizzou classmates. So hey, Dale. But something that Monsanto did that I feel like really helped ensure that leadership was being held accountable for culture is not only did they do like 360 feedback, but that leader had to then share those results with their team. So literally having to get in front of your team and say, okay, here's the results of my 360 feedback. Here's where there's some opportunity. Here where I did well, and here's what I'm going to do to make things better for you as an employee on my team. And some of those conversations were hard. Like some years are better than others. Some years I was like, whew, I don't really want to have this conversation today, but it made me a better leader in the end. So I feel like that was a way to really be able to hold leaders accountable. And then after you had that conversation, then you had to go have a conversation with your manager to say, okay, here's what the results were, here's how the conversation went with my team, and here's what I'm going to do to change.
And Melanie, to piggyback off of what you said, another great idea to do with this, because we do all those things here at Emerson, but to take it a step further is to publish, make it public, all of that stuff. So whether in some of our manufacturing facilities, we have huge whiteboards that are dedicated to nothing but the surveys and the feedback, and it's constantly updated. It's a public way to hold yourself accountable for the progress you're making. And believe you me, if people don't see that it's been visited in a while, they're going to come seek you out. They want to know, you've said this, I've seen nothing. What are you doing about it? So one way to help yourself be accountable as organizations, as you're saying, is not only those leaders having those conversations, but make those results public knowledge as far as the actions you're going to take, and have them where everybody can see them, on the doors where they're walking through, on the TV scrolling where they can see these things. Same thing we do with safety in our organizations. We keep that on the forefront of everybody's mind because it's important to us. So if this culture is important to us, if these things are important to us, we have to have those visible accountability boards and reminders for all of us too. So that's another great thing an organization can do for that.
Excellent. And I regret that we're not going to be able to get to all of the questions, but I think an add-on for Dale's question, Dale says MIZ, so ZOU. Do any of your firms have climate and culture addressed in the long-term incentive plans for executives? Long-term incentives, bonus plans, anything in that mix related to culture or climate and the role that the leader plays in driving the right culture and climate?
So not at Bayer, but at Monsanto, absolutely. 50% of a leader's bonus was based off of how well that they were a leader. So they would have to seek out that feedback. That 360 feedback survey was a part of their year-end results, and it would impact your bonus and your long-term incentives. Absolutely.
We have the similar at MasterCard. So it's not like a percentage, but at the year beginning, for example, 2021, when we do the objective settings, there are specific people manager or leader objectives that we would have to put in for the objectives that we will get marked through at the year end. And based on that, if those objectives are not met, it's going to impact the year end compensation for the following year. So it's not one percentage, like you were saying, it's 50%, it's not 1%, but yes, we are held accountable throughout the year for the objectives that are put in our objective reviews.
We don't have bonuses per se. However, employee engagement in a department is a significant contributing factor whether somebody will be considered for a promotion or not. We'll have 1 minute. If anybody is thinking about taking on some of these initiatives that Nora and Artie are talking about having crucial conversations or transforming it, and you're not doing this already, be sure to invest first of all in some change management education training to figure out why you're going to do this and engage all your stakeholders before you start down the path.
Okay, thanks for those outstanding responses. Thanks to our attendees for so many great questions. And for the attendees that provided questions and we were not able to respond live during this webinar, I promise you that we will follow up with you individually with answers for those questions. And we are running out of time, so let me just offer my sincerest thanks to all of the attendees, and especially to our insiders, Peter, Lenore, Melanie, and RT. Your insights were absolutely essential, and I'm confident that we all benefited from this session.